Dear organized religion, you left us wounded and confused. Coming up next on Pastor Bob's Coffee Break. Love this mug. My foundation is built on the promises of God. But to have that foundation, you need to know what the promises are. And that's our whole message for today. And folks, in that mug is something very special. You know, it's our very own Headbangers Brew in smaller bags, K-Cups, 5-pound bags. We have 9 different blends. Really good stuff. Check it out, along with all of our mugs, our posters, our t-shirts at wearemetalwearfamily.com. So, dear organized religion, we were once your most devoted followers. By starving us of the true message of the gospel, you left us wounded and confused. You left us with no one to turn to. We didn't know we could go to Jesus personally. So a lot of people are out there wounded, confused, not knowing where to go. They've been beat up by the church and they don't want to go back. You may be one of those. And if you are, good for you that you even tuned me in today. And I appreciate the fact that your heart is still looking heavenward and you want to do something about your life. Good for you. But let's talk about this. This is where a lot of people are. A lot of people have not been taught correctly. They've been devout followers, devoted followers, but they were starved of the true message of the gospel. Many of them spit out again from the church, wounded and confused, nowhere to turn to, not knowing that they could really go to Jesus personally on their own. Yeah. Let's go to Matthew chapter 15 and verse 14. And Jesus is speaking about the religious leaders. They're all around. He's talking to the crowds about them. And the people are coming and saying, you know, the religious leaders are upset about some of these things that you're saying. Jesus, of course, in true fashion says, I'm not concerned about that. I want to give you the truth, basically. And then he tells them specifically, he says, just leave them alone. The religious leaders, just leave them alone. They are blind guides leading blind followers. If a blind man leads a blind man, both will fall into a pit. The blind leading the blind. And he says, don't worry, that's all they're doing. They don't know the gospel message anyway. And folks, that's so important. What do you do when you're in a church with the blind leading the blind, or you've been spit out by a church where this has happened and now you're one of the fatalities, wounded and confused? The great news is Jesus says, come to me, all of you who are weary and overburdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. My yoke is easy. My burden is light, he says. And that's exactly what he'd like us to do. This is our last day that we're talking about organized religion and healing from organized religion. And I use the word healing more than anything, folks, because I don't want you to feel like I'm here to beat up the organized church. I'm really not. I just realized that we have a lot of, wounded and confused people that have been wounded and confused by an organization that is also wounded and confused. It's the blind leading the blind, as he says here in Matthew 15. And he says, I want to give you sight. I want to give you sight. Jesus, the way, the truth, the light, the life. I want to give you sight. I want to give you a path. And he says, I can do that by giving you the foundations. The foundations. My foundation is built on the promises of God. Where do you find them? From cover to cover right here in the Bible. Very exciting. I am so glad that you and I get to spend this time every day. So happy about that. I'm not going anywhere. We're going to keep doing this for a while. As long as God has me here on this earth, I'm going to do this podcast. And you and I are going to spend time over a little coffee or whatever it is. And we're going to talk about these things. We're going to go through them piece by piece. We're going to go through healing. We're going to go through restoration. We're going to go through teaching. We're going to go through explaining the promises. We're going to get through it because that is our foundation, the promises of God. On the internet, YouTube, wherever, I have thousands of podcasts like this. This isn't my first rodeo. Been doing this for decades. And I love spending the time with you. Go back and watch some old ones if you'd like to visit particular subjects. Just type in Pastor Bob, and then whatever the subject might be, you'll probably find something. But just stay with us. We're going to get to a lot of these things, and there's some great things ahead that I want to share with you. And I hope that you'll continue to join me right here on Pastor Bob's Coffee Break. Don't forget, you are blessed. So go and be a blessing.